Let's talk about the state of politics in our society today. If you know me, you know I'm not political. I don't talk about politics. I don't really get involved in it. But what I do get involved in is conversations about connection and community and the way that we're able to communicate and cooperate with each other. Because our individual ability to experience the fullness of life is dependent on other people. As much as we may want to be super independent, we are a interdependent species. We're neurobiologically wired for connection. But what we see in our society today is a huge disconnection. And I'd say more than just a disconnection, there's like a vehement, almost like polar opposite magnetic, what's the opposite of attraction, right? Like pushing apart, this active, not willing to be near each other, whether it's physically, whether it's emotionally, mentally, even in a conversation. It's very hard for people, let's say on the left, to talk to people that are on the right, and vice versa. The minute that many of us find out that somebody voted a certain way, we already have a dozen assumptions about the type of person that they are, the type of character they have, and we already know at a glance, just from that one fact, whether or not this is somebody that we're even willing to engage in, someone that we need to kind of remove from our lives, even if it's a family member, and somebody ultimately that we respect or not, all by like this one fact, right, of who somebody voted for, what side of the aisle they're on. And this is a huge tragedy. And the reason it's a tragedy is because we are making instant inferences and assumptions about somebody's character, about somebody's beliefs that, for the most part, are inaccurate. There may be some moments where we have a belief about somebody based on it, it's accurate, but more so than not, I'd say the majority of the time, we're actually cutting off people that share the same values that we have. Now, the beliefs that we have may seem at total opposite ends, but if we can really use some communication principles and emotional regulation skills to dig deeper into what is really behind those beliefs, often they are the same values that people on the left and people on the right share. The problem is most of us are not able to see those because we're in what Larry Rosen, he's a professional peacemaker, what he would call the enemy trance, which is basically a survival mechanism, right? Where whenever I feel threatened by somebody, my my system is automatically going to shut off the capacity for empathy for that person. And for good reason, from a survival and evolution standpoint. I can't be empathizing with somebody who I feel like is about to kill me, right? Like, no, like there's no room for that. I just need to focus on my survival. So that's great in the prehistoric era. The thing is, today, often we feel threatened by people who are not trying to kill us. And it's just from people who have a different belief than us. All of a sudden, that threat gets triggered, and we're overreacting with this mechanism of this trance and being unable to empathize and cutting that person off. That's it's almost like an oversensitive reaction. And oftentimes, the reaction is not proportionate to what the truth and the reality is between what that person actually believes and what you believe. But the thing is, we fall into these traps, right? And it's understandable why we do, right? Those are mechanisms that have evolved over thousands and thousands of years to keep us safe and keep us alive. And we live in a society today that our evolutionary systems haven't caught up with yet. So it makes sense why we end up in these patterns where we find ourselves unable to empathize for the other side. The reason that that's spurring this video here is just yesterday there was the news about Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated. Now he was a very vocal, very polarizing figure on the right, and uh, a lot of people see that as a threat, especially if it's people who don't agree with him. Of course, you're going to see that as a threat, right? Emotionally, if you're not able to emotionally regulate, you are going to be triggered every time you hear this guy's voice, no matter what he's saying. Anytime you hear anything about him, you're going to be triggered, right? Because you already have him associated with threat and danger. Your brain is going into fight or flight. It's like a bear is chasing you, even though in real life, there's no bear, right? It's just a guy who has different beliefs than you, who is, he's a proponent of his beliefs and he's going to share it. Now, the problem is that when we fall into that trance, we lose any connection of humanity. And what I'm seeing a lot is, something terrible happened, right? A man was murdered. And there are people that are celebrating. There are people that are, making jokes about it. And I understand that that lack of empathy is not because these people are now the bad people. It's because these people are in pain, right? And they've had their threat sense on so high and so much that they can't turn it off. Just because somebody died doesn't mean that they're able to like wake up and see that this is a human being. Who, if they were able to have an emotionally regulated conversation with about our basic needs, we can see that actually we're a lot more the same than we are different. Most people haven't had that opportunity, or they don't even know that that's a possibility. Like this is like a foreign language to them that they can't even see that. So there's nothing left for them to do except for celebrate what seems like one less enemy, one less threat. And given the work that I do, right, I work with people who are very different from me. And across the span of my life and my career, right, I work with people that are very different than me. People who may have done some really terrible things in their lives. And it's not to minimize it. Like, it's not a big deal, right? I know people have beliefs about Kirk because he said some really hurtful things. I'm not minimizing it. I'm saying like it's irrelevant, right? And I'll go to extremes, like to make a point here, right? That for me, right, I'm able to see how we're all connected. And if you understand basic needs that all human beings have, you can see how there's only really one type of person in the world. It's not like there's bad guys and good guys. It's like, no, there's just us. And there's a quote by one of the mothers of a Sandy Hook student that was murdered. And she says there's two types of people in the world. There's good people, and there's good people who are in pain. And what that means, like I internalize that, right? Like I know that in my being that people who may have done very hurtful, damaging, hateful things, even violent things, atrocious things, I can still see that that is a person who is trying their best to meet their needs. And they're happening to do it in a way that's terribly dysfunctional, terribly damaging, and violent and destructive, all of that. And that doesn't erase from the humanity that that they have basic needs that they're trying to meet. And somewhere is a thwarted idea of how they can get those needs met, right? Uh, I've talked a lot about active shooters, right? Whenever there's an active shooter in a city, the mayor, almost like clockwork, the mayor, the governor, they come on stage and they just routinely say, "This is a monster," right? We can't let this happen in our society. We can't let this happen in our community. That person, there's something wrong with them. There was something wrong there. Now, I disagree with this language. By saying that this person who did a terrible thing is some sort of monster or some evil character, whatever it is, we need to pluck them out from our society, right? Like, don't let them in. They're different. It's just a way of ignoring the responsibility that we all have, that any of us could have been that guy. And most of us are going to get uncomfortable here. Most of us are like, no, you're losing me. I would never do that. Sure, I get it. But if you had walked in this guy's shoes for his whole life, I can guarantee you that's not a happy guy who did that, right? I can imagine there's a lot of pain there. And notice you're going to start to get defensive and think that I'm justifying or minimizing that this is okay because he was in pain. That's not what I'm saying here, right? Like, notice, right, when your body is getting very like heightened by what I'm saying. That's just, another example of how we can't emotionally regulate in these conversations. So it's okay if you need to just like take a deep breath, right, and slow down here. But I'm able to see that that guy was trying to meet his needs with some sort of he's in this much pain, and for whatever reason feels like nobody is seeing it, nobody understands, he's screaming, nobody's listening, and the only way to try to get some sort of relief or healing or whatever is to outwardly express this pain that he's feeling internally. That maybe then if you see it and you feel it, then things will be different. Of course, that's not the way it works, right? Like, we don't react in that way. But what I'm saying is that I can still see the humanity even beside this guy who does something heinous, right? Now, I'm not saying that he should be allowed to walk in our streets and all of this stuff. No, absolutely not. We need to have boundaries and safeguards and consequences, of course. But I'm saying that there's a false dichotomy that we have, that it's either we empathize or we punish. And I'm saying it doesn't have to be one or the other. I can totally empathize with these people that I disagree with. I can totally empathize. I can see that maybe they have the same values and they're going about it in a very different way. Maybe they are attacking instead of actually being open and vulnerable. Whatever. I can have empathy for that, and I can still hold that these people need to be responsible for their actions. Yeah, okay. And in a justice and fair type of way. We don't carry out justice by just killing each other. And that's what I'm seeing that's so disturbing for me, is that we're totally cutting the humanity out from the other side. We're assuming that they must be heartless, cold people if you voted this certain way, right? People on the left will say if you voted for Trump, that already means a lot about you. You're heartless. You don't care about me. You don't care about gay rights. You don't care about trans rights. You don't care about the safety of children. You just love your guns. You don't care. You're selfish, whatever. And people on the right are going to have similar judgments back at people on the left, right? Like, you're not actually paying attention. You don't care about this crazy power dynamic. You are blinded and misled, right? Everyone's going to have judgments back and forth at each other. But if we're not able to actually sit down and have a conversation with each other to really understand what's beautiful in your world, what do you care about more than anything? And why? Why does that matter so much for you? If you have a chance, you need to check out the Enemies Project. It's Larry Rosen, who I mentioned before. He's basically filming these conversations with people that are on opposite ends of a certain topic or an issue. There was a transitioned woman named Eve who was talking to a MAGA mama named Nancy, I believe, who believed that any trans person must be so mentally ill they should be in an institution, right? You can imagine these two people sitting down to have a conversation. You can probably imagine it's not going to go very well. But the power of being able to have the right communication techniques, the right emotional regulation, the right understanding of basic needs and values. I'll tell you, you watch this video and you can see how by the end of this conversation together, neither of them gave up their views or their beliefs, their viewpoints. That wasn't the point. But at the end of it, you have Nancy looking at Eve saying, "You are a beautiful woman. And you and I really, we care about the same things. We just want love. We really care about our family and belonging, right?" And they're like close and hugging at the end. It doesn't make sense to most of us who are caught in this binary of either they agree and we're friends or they disagree and they're an enemy. That's why this thing is so special. It's called the enemy project. It's basically dismantling that the enemy that we see, the enemy that's out there, that's othering, right, is actually not that different than us. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people to recognize. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people to believe, because then they need to confront some truths about themselves that they probably don't want to look at. But the point is, if we want to move our society towards a place of cooperation, of mutual respect, doesn't mean we all have to agree, but that we can have mutual care and empathy for each other that can exist even though we disagree. And I think there's a lot of people that don't think those two things can happen at the same time. It's that if you believe this, you are fundamentally against humanity, which means I do get the right to just write you off. And by all means, you do have the right to do whatever you want to do and treat, however you want to cut people off from your life. That's fine. I'm just offering here that there is another way, right? That we don't have to all agree. We don't have to change each other's minds in order to agree. We don't have to give up our values in order to agree and be human and civil and even very loving and close and connected with each other. But it's going to take being willing to sit in some uncomfortable conversations where we can dive a little bit deeper. And until we're ready to do that, you're just going to see these bickering matches. It's because nobody's really listening, right? And nobody's really listening to underneath both sides saying whatever they're saying is some measure of fear. Everyone's afraid. And if you really peel the layers back, there's another great episode of the Enemies Project where you have a proud boy that's on the right with a far left liberal that are meeting, and they're talking about how they're actually both afraid of like losing control in this society, in this government, like being overthrown. They're both afraid of the same thing, right? There's a lot more that we have in common than that is different. So I guess this is just a call, right? To say that there's another way, right? Like it's not one box or the other, that either you're with me or you're against me. You're with them or you're against, like there's more than just two boxes, right? I have friends that are on both sides of the aisle, both of whom I don't agree with politically. I have friends that are on the right. I have friends that are on the left, both of whom I have some disagreements with. I don't fully subscribe to either one of them. But you know what? I'm able to love and treasure the relationships that I have with each one of them, because our relationship goes a lot deeper than what you think about the political system and what you think about our economics and who you voted for president. It just goes that much deeper. So maybe I'm just saying this to say that that's possible. And I still have my beliefs and my values. I'm not sacrificing them. I am very, tied to the integrity that I have with my beliefs of love and kindness and connection and authenticity and honesty, right? Like those are core for me. I'm not letting those go to have these relationships. I can somehow hold those while I'm in these relationships with these people who disagree. And I guess that's the point here is that we don't have to give up our beliefs and we don't have to change their mind in order to connect. And that's what I focus a lot of my time on is showing people how we can connect, not just with the people that we like, that we have conflicts with, right? But also the people that we don't like, that we have conflicts with, the people that we hate, right? So, I just, everyone's so tired right now on both sides, right? Everyone's so tired. They look at the state of the world. They feel like everything's in chaos. And I just see another way. I see a lot of hope that's possible for those of us that are willing to take a step to try to understand and try to listen. And if we're so hurt and so triggered that we're not able to listen and understand, then the first step is for us to deal with our own wounds, right? And actively work on those so that we can be in a place where we're regulated. That's the opportunity that's available to us so that we can connect. And of course, we're all going to be at different levels of that, but just to show that it's possible. And social media is a place where we're put into one of two boxes. And if I can just say, there's not just two boxes, right? We all don't just fall into two buckets. There's room for nuance. There's room for subtleties. There's room for the duality and the contradiction of it all, and how to stand in the middle of that contradiction where we can totally disagree with someone's beliefs and their politics, and we can also hold firm to their rights as human beings and connect with them, even love them. And that's an example of what yesterday's incident brought up for me. Is this is just one more example of how we can stand for humanity without giving up our values. And just because we stand up for one doesn't mean that we're automatically dismissing another, right? There's all these false binaries that we're so like tied up so tight in the knot that like we can't even like take a step back and see it. So I just want to offer that there is another way. It's a lot more peaceful. It's a lot more authentic. It's a lot more genuine, right? That we don't have to be hiding in fear or attacking with anger. We can connect in a vulnerable way. And of course, we can do that in a responsible way. I'll probably be talking about this a little bit more over time because it's something I'm so passionate about. But in the meantime, take a deep breath, take care of yourselves, see the humanity in yourself, and see if you might be able to stretch just a little bit to see the humanity in someone else as well.